Hey everyone, I'm JD Fiscus. I'm a principal and director of AI Labs, Ops, and I've even sat on the AI board. And I keep seeing a narrative going around that MCP is dead. And I actually don't agree with that. I think that's fundamentally wrong. So I wanted to go through a few reasons of why I think MCP is alive and well and why it's actually going to become more and more important into agentic services. So the first is that MCP was actually adopted into the Linux Foundation. It is no longer just a part of what Anthropic was doing, and more LLM providers are actually supporting this. So we're seeing things like Claude actually using MCP. We're seeing MCPs being used in V0, in Lovable, in all of these like different tools that you can actually build your own MCPs into. The fact that it's gone into the Linux Foundation and is becoming part of that open source as a concept means that it's around to stay. It's going to be adopted and brought in as as more of a web standard, and we're going to see more and more implementations of it. So the fact that we've already seen it adopted into the Linux Foundation is incredibly important. Along with that, what we're seeing is we're actually seeing things like ChatGPT apps. ChatGPT apps actually run on MCP. They run on what's called the MCP resources, and it's where you actually can take the server of MCP and serve up a React app. And that is how they actually do bi-directional communication from the ChatGPT app to your server, render the UI, and you can actually interact with it. What's really interesting about that is literally yesterday, Claude announced that, and on the MCP protocol blog, announced that they will be adopting the next iteration of the MCP spec, which is MCP EXT or MCP apps. And you can now build apps that will actually be used in Claude. What's super cool about this is MCP EXT specification has been around for a while. And what this means, or the short term of MCP apps, is basically you can build a UI. So if I have a website and I am building an agentic application, I can actually go out, use my own MCP server, render my UI components that I want to use inside of my chat, and actually interact with them. So no longer are we constrained by the fact that we have to like build our own experiences, or the fact that we actually need to leverage a custom UI. We can actually serve this up with MCP. The other reason that I think MCP is around is there's even more specifications changing. So in the W3 specification, which is basically, or consortium, that's basically, what the standards that we adopt for the internet, there's something called Web MCP. So Web MCP is how on your front end, your actual website, you can turn that website in essentially an MCP. And what that would allow us to do is, along with like the agentic shopping or commerce protocol, it means that on your website, if you are serving through, say, Shopify or some other e-commerce, like you're actually selling a product, you can actually turn your site into an MCP. That MCP means that an agent whether could actually go to your site and actually communicate with it. We can see a world where we can actually have our websites communicating with AI agents and actually being able to purchase items from the AI agent from our already existing web store. Now that last one is a little new. It's that specification hasn't been dropped, but the fact that it's already in the works is incredibly important. So with all these advancements with MCP, you can say that you might not use it in your like AI assisted development, and that's an interesting way to think about it, because with the ability of skills, they they can do a lot of different things that most of and really easily, because it's just a markdown file that you can actually interact with things. So I think skills are going to become more important. But what I do think is, along with those skills, if they have access to MCP servers to go and do actions on your behalf, whether that's things like GitHub or Stripe. I actually use the Stripe MCP a lot in order to figure my applications and do marketing strategies and things like that. I think that it'll be a very much like a good addition. And the last thing that I want to say is, to me, when we start seeing MCP, what's really happening is we're really going through a rebranding. I think MCP, when it first started, everybody was just using functions. That's very limited scope of what MCP can actually do. So when I say that it's being rebranded, if you look at things like data connectors, when you want to log in with your Google Drive through Claude or even through OpenAI, that's actually an MCP. So they just rebranded the name. When we look at ChatGPT apps, that's just an MCP. They just rebranded the name. So for me, MCP is around to stay. It's not going anywhere. It might be a little bit more behind the scenes. It's probably not going to be as much as like the hype cycle, but is going to be a foundational principle in the AI space, and especially when building agentic applications.